Imagine standing at the edge of a riverbank, watching people struggle to cross the turbulent waters. Some are genuinely striving to make it across, giving their best effort against the strong currents. Others, however, flounder aimlessly, making no real attempt to swim. If you are compassionate, your instinct is to help, perhaps by offering a hand, throwing a rope, or stepping into the water to guide them. At first, it feels noble. But over time, something troubling becomes clear. Certain people aren't failing because the river is too strong, they are failing because they refuse to try. Worse still, some resent your help, as if your effort highlights their unwillingness. You pause and realize that your goodwill is being drained. You're exhausted from offering lifelines to people who either reject them or misuse them. This is when Carl Jung's insights into human nature echo back to you. Not everyone is ready or willing to confront their struggles. Jung taught that much of human suffering is rooted in the unconscious, and many people prefer to remain there rather than face the painful work of growth. In this metaphor, the river represents life itself, and the struggling swimmers symbolize the different kinds of people we encounter on our journey. Jung's psychology reminds us that helping others is meaningful, but discernment is crucial. If we constantly direct our energy toward those unwilling to engage with their own inner conflicts, we risk depleting ourselves without creating real change. Jung pointed out that some individuals resist growth because confronting the shadow of the hidden parts of themselves is too uncomfortable. These are the people who may drag you down with them, not out of malice alone, but because they cannot yet face their inner truths. If we fail to recognize this, we may find ourselves caught in their unconscious patterns, drained of energy and spirit. Life is finite, and so are our inner resources, our time, energy, and compassion. When these are spent on people who neither appreciate nor transform from our support, we lose the opportunity to make a deeper impact on those who are truly seeking growth. Jung would remind us that wisdom lies not in endless sacrifice, but in understanding human complexity, knowing when someone is open to help and when they are locked within resistance. This is not about coldness or cruelty. It is about clarity. Some people can only begin to heal when they decide to confront their own darkness. By learning to step back when our kindness is wasted, we preserve our strength, protect our peace, and allow space for genuine connections with those ready to embrace change. In today's video, we'll explore 8 types of people Carl Jung would caution us to avoid giving our energy to. Number 1. The ungrateful. Carl Jung's psychology sheds profound light on why we must be cautious of the ungrateful. Gratitude is not merely a polite social gesture, it is a sign of psychological maturity, an acknowledgement that life and relationships exist within a web of giving and receiving. A grateful person recognizes that every act of kindness strengthens bonds, builds trust, and affirms our shared humanity. In contrast, the ungrateful person disrupts this balance. Their inability or refusal to appreciate what is given erodes connection, drains energy, and spreads a subtle poison into the fabric of relationships. Ungrateful individuals often live in a state of inner emptiness, where no gift, no kindness, no effort is ever enough. They constantly demand more, yet never feel satisfied. Jung would argue that such people are trapped in unconscious patterns of entitlement, unable to integrate the shadow aspect of their psyche, the part that resents dependence and refuses humility. They want the benefits of others' help without the responsibility of reciprocity or acknowledgement. Why then should we be cautious when dealing with the ungrateful? Because their lack of appreciation does more than offend, it distorts the meaning of your generosity. Imagine offering help to someone, only to be met with silence, a cold stare, or even criticism that you did not do enough. In that moment, your goodwill is transformed into a source of hurt and disappointment. Instead of gratitude strengthening the bond, ingratitude weakens it. Jung often noted that unconscious people project their inner dissatisfaction outward. The ungrateful, rather than facing their own emptiness, cast it onto others, making you feel that your kindness was nothing more than an obligation. In this way, helping them becomes a trap, draining your energy while feeding their resentment. Religious wisdom also echoes this truth. One of the most striking biblical stories is when Jesus healed 10 lepers, and only one returned to thank him. His response were, "Not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9?" reveals that even the highest acts of compassion are diminished when gratitude is absent. This aligns with Jung's insight that the failure to express gratitude reflects a deeper failure of consciousness, an unwillingness to integrate life's gifts into one's soul. Modern life offers countless examples of this pattern. Perhaps you have a colleague who constantly asks for your assistance but never acknowledges your effort. Or a family member who repeatedly leans on you for financial support yet never expresses thanks or attempts to improve their situation. Such experiences leave you depleted, as if your care only reinforces their passivity. Jung would caution that this dynamic keeps both parties stuck in exhaustion and them in unconscious dependence. This raises a vital question. Should we continue to help people whose ingratitude only strengthens their weakness? Helping the ungrateful is like pouring water into a cracked vessel. No matter how much you give, it will never hold. Instead of nourishing life, your energy leaks away. This does not mean that Jung would advise withholding kindness altogether. He believed acts of giving should be guided by awareness, not blind compulsion. To give unconsciously, without considering the psychological readiness of the other, is to risk fueling dysfunction. By contrast, giving to those capable of gratitude creates transformation. Gratitude deepens the connection between giver and receiver, allowing both to grow. Consider the example of a friend who borrows money. You lend it, not because you expect repayment, but because you care. Yet when repayment never comes, and not even a word of thanks is offered, the relationship tilts into imbalance. Worse, they may return asking for more, as if your generosity were endless. At this point, you are no longer helping, they are exploiting. Jung would say that such situations require conscious withdrawal, otherwise you become complicit in perpetuating their unconscious patterns. In the workplace, the dynamic is no different. Supporting an ungrateful colleague may lead to more work falling on your shoulders without acknowledgement or reciprocity. Over time, resentment builds, and you realize that what you believed was generosity has become a form of self-sabotage. The lesson Jung leaves us with is clear. Helping others is noble, but wisdom lies in discernment. Not everyone is capable of gratitude, and when gratitude is absent, the act of giving is stripped of its meaning. Protect your energy, choose carefully whom you extend your help to, and invest in those who will honor the exchange. For in gratitude, not entitlement, lies the seed of true human connection. Number 2. The lazy. Carl Jung's psychology often emphasizes the necessity of conscious action and the refusal to remain trapped in unconscious patterns. He believed that life requires us to actively engage with our own potential, to confront reality rather than escape it. When we allow laziness to dominate, we avoid this confrontation. Laziness, then, is not merely the absence of movement, it is a refusal to grow, a denial of the responsibility to bring one's inner potential into reality. Jung reminds us that time is not simply a neutral flow of hours and days. Each moment carries the possibility of individuation, the process of becoming one's true self. Wasting time through laziness means abandoning that possibility. This is why lazy people often cannot be helped. They resist stepping onto the path of their own development. Consider a real-life example. A friend who endlessly complains about their circumstances, about their lack of success, or about how life has treated them unfairly. You listen with patience, even offering suggestions, perhaps encouraging them to apply for a new job, learn a new skill, or change their environment. But months pass, and you notice nothing has changed. They remain exactly where they were, clinging to the comfort of their complaints. Why? Because laziness is easier than responsibility. They prefer to wallow in excuses than to confront the fear and effort required for transformation. In Jungian terms, such individuals are possessed by inertia, by an unconscious tendency to avoid life's demands. Their avoidance is not just a personal weakness, it becomes a kind of psychological burden for those around them. Every time you extend help, advice, or emotional energy, it is drained into an empty well. The lazy refuse to engage with their own inner drive, so your efforts serve only to reinforce their passivity. In today's world, the lazy appear in many forms. They may be the family member who continually depends on others for financial support while avoiding the discipline of independence, or the colleague who shirks responsibilities, leaving their coworkers to carry the load, or the friend who always seeks encouragement but never acts upon it. Helping such people becomes exhausting. Over time, you realize you are not truly helping and how you are enabling their refusal to grow. But this raises a deeper question. Is laziness always a personal choice, or can it be rooted in upbringing, trauma, or unconscious complexes? Jung would say it is often both. Some forms of laziness stem from an individual's refusal to take responsibility. Others may be symptoms of deeper unresolved issues, fear of failure, unresolved parental influence, or a hidden resistance to growth. This is where discernment is necessary. Not all laziness is the same, and not every person can be dismissed. Yet the hard truth remains. No one can rescue a person who refuses to rescue themselves. Helping the lazy often feels like pushing a car stuck in neutral. No matter how much effort you expend, the car will not move without its own engine running. Jung believed transformation always requires conscious participation. If the individual resists this, no external force, no friend, no family member, no mentor can compel growth. In friendships, the lazy often turn you into a crutch. They lean on you for advice, favors, or energy, yet they make no effort to stand on their own. Over time, this pattern doesn't just stunt their growth, it begins to undermine yours. You spend so much time propping them up that your own progress slows. Jung would caution us here. Over-identifying with the rescuer archetype blinds us to the fact that our energy is being misused. In professional life, supporting the lazy can be even more dangerous. You might find yourself carrying their share of the workload. Others notice, resentment builds, and your own opportunities may shrink because you are too busy compensating for their inertia. Meanwhile, the lazy colleague learns that they can continue avoiding effort because someone else will always clean up after them. Jung's teachings remind us of a crucial truth. Laziness is ultimately a refusal of life, a denial of individuation. To continually give our time and energy to such people is to collude with their denial. It prevents them from ever facing their inner conflict, and it diminishes us by keeping us locked in patterns of frustration. So ask yourself, are you helping someone who refuses to help themselves? If so, step back. Your time, your energy, your very life force are too valuable to waste on the unwilling. Helping the lazy is not generosity, it is self-betrayal. Jung would insist that we redirect that energy toward our own growth and toward those who are ready to awaken to theirs. The lazy resist responsibility, refuse to act, and remain trapped in unconscious avoidance. They betray not only themselves, but also those who try to lift them. Helping them is like pouring water into a cracked vessel. No matter how much you give, it will never be enough. That is why Jung's psychology teaches us to be wise in choosing where to invest our compassion. Next, we move on to the third type of person. But before we do, let me leave you with this question. Is everyone truly deserving of your help, even if they never take responsibility for their own lives? Number 3, the irresponsible. In Jungian psychology, responsibility is not merely about external tasks, it is about the inner integration of the self. To Jung, failing to take responsibility is not only a practical failure, but a psychological wound. The irresponsible are those who avoid accountability, project their mistakes onto others, and refuse to confront the shadow within themselves. Such people not only harm themselves, but also create suffering for those around them. Jung taught that what we fail to confront in ourselves eventually shows up in the world as fate. When irresponsible people deny accountability, they are not simply avoiding duties, they are projecting their unacknowledged shadow onto others, making the world bear the cost of their inner refusal. A modern example can be seen in those who break the law, evade duties, or act recklessly without concern for consequences. They may drive dangerously, ignore rules, or fail to uphold basic civic obligations. Others often pay the price for their recklessness. Sadly, society sometimes excuses this behavior, allowing the irresponsible to escape real consequences. But Jung would remind us that enabling such people strengthens their unconscious avoidance. Instead of integration, their shadow grows darker, and others suffer as a result. Helping an irresponsible person may feel compassionate, but it often has the opposite effect. By shielding them from their mistakes, we allow their shadow to deepen. Jung taught that the path to wholeness requires confrontation with the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. But when we protect others from their own irresponsibility, we rob them of the chance to grow. A common example is found in leadership. An irresponsible leader refuses to admit mistakes, preferring to blame others or circumstances. In doing so, they shatter trust and stability within the team. Just as Jung believed that a society reflects the state of its individuals, an organization reflects the state of its leader. If the leader cannot integrate their errors into learning, the group beneath them collapses into confusion, distrust, and inefficiency. Here lies an important truth. Helping the irresponsible is like feeding the shadow while starving the self. Jung echoed a principle similar to an old saying, "Do not cast pearls before swine." In psychological terms, this means do not waste your inner treasures or time, your energy, your compassion on those who cannot recognize their value. When given to the irresponsible, such treasures are squandered, ignored, or even twisted into further avoidance. Life, in Jung's view, is a process of individuation, a series of choices through which we become whole by uniting conscious responsibility with unconscious impulses. Each action carries meaning, and every responsibility neglected represents a part of the self that is denied. Without responsibility, there can be no true growth, only fragmentation. The irresponsible erode not only their own wholeness, but also the bonds of trust in society. Families often feel this deeply. Imagine the sibling who constantly falls into financial chaos, always expecting to be rescued. By repeatedly bailing them out, you might think you are protecting them, but in reality, you are blocking them from confronting their shadow. They never learn self-discipline or accountability because someone else always cleans up their mess. Jung would say that such rescuing only strengthens their unconscious avoidance, ensuring they never grow. The workplace provides another clear example. A colleague who habitually drops responsibilities often looks to others for damage control. At first, you may help out of goodwill. But over time, the burden of cleaning up after them drains your energy and distracts you from your own tasks. Jung emphasized the necessity of discipline and the confrontation of one's shadow qualities, the irresponsible lack. Covering for them only entrenches their immaturity. Helping the irresponsible, then, is like building on unstable ground. No matter how much effort you put into supporting them, their foundation collapses again and again because it is rooted in denial rather than accountability. Jungian psychology encourages discernment in where we invest our energy. Compassion should not mean enabling another's unconscious avoidance. True compassion means allowing others to face the consequences of their own choices, so they have the opportunity to integrate responsibility into their lives. In conclusion, Jung reminds us that irresponsibility is more than laziness or neglect. It is the refusal to confront the shadow. By repeatedly saving the irresponsible, we deny them the painful but necessary process of growth. Helping should not mean protecting someone from their lessons. It should mean giving them the space to face themselves. The question then is simple. Are you helping them, or are you keeping them from becoming whole? Number 4. The manipulators. Have you ever felt manipulated by someone, whether at work, within your family, or even in close relationships? These individuals rarely make direct demands. Instead, they skillfully twist emotions, distort situations, and subtly influence your choices until you find yourself following their will without even realizing it. Carl Jung's psychology offers a unique perspective on such people. Jung believed that much of human suffering stems from unconscious dynamics, hidden drives, repressed desires, and projections we fail to recognize. Manipulators thrive precisely because they exploit these unconscious forces. They sense where your wounds are, or guilt, your longing for approval, your fear of rejection, and use them as levers of control. Jung would argue that to help manipulators without awareness is one of the greatest mistakes we can make, because in doing so, we allow their shadow to dominate our lives. Consider real-life examples. One of the most public cases was the situation of Britney Spears, who for over a decade lived under the control of her father through a conservatorship. Her father didn't just manage her finances, he dictated her personal life, career, and freedom of choice. Britney's individuality and agency were systematically stripped away under the guise of protection. From a Jungian view, this was a profound violation of individuation, the process of becoming one's authentic self. Her father, by acting as a manipulator, projected his will onto her, keeping her trapped in a role that served his interests rather than her psychological growth. Supporting such a manipulator, Jung would say, only strengthens their shadow, while the victim loses their rightful chance at self-realization. Manipulation doesn't always happen in the spotlight. In relationships, manipulators often weave invisible chains of dependency. They use guilt, fear, or emotional blackmail to keep others compliant. Jung explained that such dynamics stem from unconscious archetypes like the victim, the tyrant, or the savior that play out in relationships when people fail to integrate their shadow. A manipulative partner might make you feel guilty for setting boundaries, or convince you that leading them would mean you are cruel or selfish. The result? Your autonomy fades, your voice weakens, and you remain entangled in a dynamic that feeds their control while starving your own growth. Jung teaches that real freedom comes only when we take ownership of our psyche, our thoughts, emotions, and choices rather than allowing others to possess them. Helping manipulators, without discernment, strips us of this freedom. Instead of supporting their illusions, we must cultivate clarity. True kindness, Jung would say, is never blind, it sees both light and shadow. Manipulators, however, thrive on deception. They present themselves as victims in need of rescue, or as saviors who only want the best for you. In reality, they are using your goodwill to serve their unconscious drives. Helping such a person is like handing the keys of your inner home to a thief. They enter your psyche, take what they need, and leave you drained. Jung emphasized the importance of integrity and authenticity, but manipulators operate through masks, the persona they craft for the world, hiding their deeper shadow motives. In personal relationships, this often looks like guilt-tripping or emotional entanglement. You are made to feel that refusing them is betrayal, while compliance is the only way to maintain peace. Over time, this erodes your self-worth as you begin to mistake control for care. Jung warned against letting our compassion be hijacked by projections. When we unconsciously play roles in someone else's drama, we sacrifice our path toward individuation. At work, manipulators are just as dangerous. They may flatter you into taking on their tasks, pressure you into covering their mistakes, or subtly convince you that it's your duty to protect them. Once the work is done, they claim the credit, leaving you depleted and invisible. Helping manipulators in this way doesn't inspire their growth, it only strengthens their reliance on shadow-driven strategies. Jung's psychology reminds us that every act of assistance should contribute to individuation for both ourselves and others. If your help feeds manipulation, you are not serving growth but merely fueling a destructive cycle. To face a manipulator with clarity is not cruelty, it is wisdom. It is the refusal to let another person's shadow dictate your destiny. You've now reached the halfway point of this journey through the dangerous types of people Jung would warn us against. Take a moment to reflect. Have you been entangled with manipulators, mistaking their shadow play for genuine need? If so, now is the time to reclaim your agency, sharpen your awareness, and move forward with greater clarity. Number 5. The chronic critics. Have you ever found yourself surrounded by people who constantly judge and criticize, no matter how much effort you put in? These are the chronic critics, individuals who seem incapable of offering encouragement or appreciation. Instead, they focus only on flaws, belittling others while masking their own inner dissatisfaction. Carl Jung's psychology offers deep insights into why such people behave this way, and more importantly, how we should respond. Jung believed that every individual carries within them a shadow, the unacknowledged, hidden aspects of their personality. Chronic critics often project their unresolved insecurities and weaknesses outward, casting them onto others. Rather than facing their own inadequacies, they make it their mission to highlight yours. This is not about helping you grow. It is about reducing you to their level so they can feel superior, if only for a moment. Unlike constructive criticism, which comes from a place of genuine care and a desire to see others improve, chronic criticism has no such purpose. Constructive feedback uplifts it, offers clarity, guidance, and direction. Chronic criticism, by contrast, is fueled by bitterness, envy, and self-loathing. It seeks only to undermine. Jung would say that the critic's own unlived life, the parts of themselves they refuse to confront, are reflected back through their constant attacks on others. You may wonder why they behave this way. The answer lies in their lack of individuation, Jung's term for the process of integrating the self and becoming whole. People who do not embrace this process remain fragmented and insecure. When they encounter someone achieving success or showing confidence, they feel threatened. Criticism becomes their weapon to cut others down, a way to avoid facing the painful truth about themselves. Now consider this question. If you try to help a chronic critic, will they change? Jung would argue that without a conscious willingness to face their shadow, they will not. These individuals do not seek growth. Their cycle of negativity gives them a false sense of power, and no amount of external help can penetrate that unless they are ready to confront themselves. Offering them your energy or kindness is like pouring water into a broken vessel it never holds. Take the workplace as an example. A healthy leader provides constructive criticism, designed to guide and strengthen the team. But a leader who embodies the chronic critic archetype will point out every flaw without offering solutions. Instead of fostering growth, they sap morale, reduce productivity, and erode trust. Jung would warn that such leaders unconsciously project their own inadequacy onto subordinates, poisoning the collective psyche of the group. In friendships, the same pattern emerges. A chronic critic may belittle your ideas, mock your achievements, or twist every gesture of goodwill into something insufficient. Even when you go out of your way to help, they find fault in the way you did it. Over time, this erodes your confidence and drains your energy. Jung stressed the importance of protecting one's psychic energy, what he called libido, from those who feed off it parasitically. Chronic critics thrive on consuming the vitality of others, leaving them depleted. Helping such individuals, then, is like planting seeds in toxic soil. No matter how much sunlight or water you give, nothing will grow. Their negativity poisons the ground. Jung would say that rather than trying to transform them, your task is to protect yourself from their influence. By refusing to engage in their cycle of projection, you preserve your own path toward individuation. In relationships, whether professional or personal, chronic critics undermine connection. Instead of genuine dialogue, they create an atmosphere of distrust and dissatisfaction. Over time, this can distort your self-image, as their projections seep into your psyche. Jung cautioned that the greatest danger of projection is not recognizing it. When we fail to see that the critic's words are reflections of their own shadow, we may mistakenly adopt those judgments as truths about ourselves. So how should we respond? Jung's teaching is clear. Our responsibility is to differentiate between constructive voices that help us grow and destructive ones that pull us down. True transformation comes from within, and no one can achieve individuation while constantly absorbing the poison of others. Chronic critics are not worth the investment of endless patience or support because they do not genuinely seek change. Instead, focus your kindness on those who are open, self-aware, and willing to grow. Life, Jung reminds us, is a process of becoming whole. To achieve that, we must learn to conserve our energy for what truly matters. Engaging endlessly with chronic critics is not a path to wholeness, but to fragmentation. Protecting yourself from their influence is not cruelty, it is wisdom. By doing so, you preserve your inner balance, allowing your energy to fuel growth, creativity, and authentic relationships. Chronic critics will always exist, but they do not have to control your life. Their endless negativity is not a reflection of your worth, but of their own unacknowledged shadow. Let them carry it. Your task is to rise above, to walk the path of individuation and to direct your compassion toward those who use it to grow. Number 6. The narcissists. Have you ever wondered if it is truly worth helping people who believe the world exists only to serve them? Narcissists are not simply individuals who enjoy admiration, they demand it as their right. They expect every situation, every conversation, and every relationship to orbit around their own ego. Carl Jung observed that narcissism is deeply tied to the inflated persona, the mask individuals wear to project superiority and perfection to the outside world. The tragedy is that beneath this mask lies a fragile and undeveloped self, which they desperately try to conceal. When you attempt to help a narcissist, you are not engaging with their true self, you are only feeding the mask. And this is precisely why your efforts rarely bring about real change. Narcissists are resistant to self-reflection. They struggle to admit mistakes or face their own flaws. To them, any form of feedback that is not praise feels like an attack. Jung warned that when the ego becomes too dominant, it cuts a person off from the process of individuation, the psychological journey toward wholeness. Helping a narcissist, therefore, often means reinforcing their illusions rather than guiding them toward growth. Imagine trying to encourage someone to change their destructive patterns. Instead of listening, a narcissist convinces themselves that their way is already perfect. Your advice is dismissed, and your effort becomes fuel for their inflated sense of superiority. In Jungian terms, their shadow, the repressed, unconscious part of the psyche, remains unacknowledged. Instead of integrating their shadow, they project it onto others, blaming the world for their shortcomings while guarding their own self-image. Consider friendships where a narcissist dominates every interaction. They boast endlessly about their achievements while showing little to no interest in your life. Over time, you may begin to feel invisible, reduced to a background role in the theater of their ego. Jung would argue that this is a classic case of one person refusing the process of individuation while forcing others to carry the burden of their unintegrated shadow. Helping such a person does not restore balance, it deepens the imbalance. In professional or public settings, narcissists often turn group efforts into personal showcases. Even when part of the team, they maneuver events to highlight their role while downplaying the contributions of others. To offer help in such circumstances is to risk being exploited because the narcissist is not interested in collective growth, only in personal validation. Jung believed that real transformation requires openness to self-examination and humility before the unconscious. Narcissists, however, live in denial of their deeper self. No amount of external support can replace the inner work they refuse to do. True help, in the Jungian sense, is guiding someone towards self-knowledge, encouraging them to confront the parts of themselves they would rather avoid. Narcissists, with their prideful resistance, are unwilling to walk that path. Therefore, the wisest response is not to exhaust yourself trying to change them, but to recognize the futility. To help a narcissist is to pour energy into a void, strengthening their mask while neglecting your own psychological well-being. Jung reminds us that your task is not to save those who refuse to awaken, but to protect your own individuation journey. We have now examined the narcissistic personality type, one of the most draining and unrewarding people to assist. Next, we will explore another equally damaging type, the opportunist. Unlike narcissists who demand admiration, opportunists constantly seek to exploit others for personal gain. Helping them is not only futile, but actively dangerous, as it enables manipulation and unethical behavior. Number 7. The opportunists. Carl Jung believed that a life of integrity requires us to confront our shadow, the hidden, often darker aspects of the psyche, and to integrate it, rather than project it onto others. Opportunists, however, refuse this inner work. They thrive by exploiting others, manipulating circumstances for personal gain, and escaping responsibility. Instead of facing their own inadequacies, they lean on others' efforts, using charm, convenience, or manipulation to secure advantages they never earned. Helping such individuals does not nurture growth, it feeds their shadow. By supporting them, you don't encourage maturity, encourage dependency, exploitation, and dishonesty. Jung would argue that opportunists represent an archetype of disconnection from the self, where the ego dominates and morality is replaced with raw self-interest. Opportunists often appear in places where rewards are plentiful, but effort is minimal. In the workplace, for example, they may avoid meetings, sidestep responsibilities, and contribute little. Yet, when success arrives, they are the first to step forward, claiming the credit. They build nothing but always know how to reap the fruits of what others have planted. This archetype mirrors what Jung described as the trickster figure, who bends truth and exploits situations, not to evolve, but to evade responsibility and secure advantage. The question is, should we continue to help someone who takes without giving? When you support an opportunist, are you truly guiding them toward growth, or are you strengthening their most destructive tendencies? According to Jung, true transformation requires the courage to look inward, to accept one's flaws, and to balance the shadow with conscious awareness. But opportunists evade this process. Your help does not awaken them, it shields them from the consequences they must face if they are ever to mature. By helping opportunists, we unintentionally validate their behavior. We give them more chances to manipulate, more opportunities to avoid responsibility, and more room to exploit those who genuinely contribute. Worse still, we discourage fairness. The deserving are overlooked while opportunists collect rewards. In Jungian terms, this perpetuates collective shadow behavior, where dishonesty, exploitation, and selfishness infect not just individuals, but entire groups or societies. Opportunists also appear outside of professional settings. In communities, they eagerly participate when benefits are clear, but vanish the moment sacrifice or dedication is required. Their presence drains group energy, erodes trust, and diminishes the collective spirit. They do not value reciprocity, only opportunity. Jung would say that such behavior reflects an ego cut off from the self, unwilling to engage in individuation, the journey toward wholeness and authenticity. True help, in Jung's view, is never about shielding someone from their shadow, but about encouraging them to face it. When we continue to assist opportunists, we deny them this confrontation. We become enablers of their arrested development, reinforcing their illusions instead of challenging them to grow. Therefore, the best way to help an opportunist is to stop allowing them to exploit us. By setting boundaries, we force them to encounter their own limitations. Only then do they have the chance if they choose to face their shadow. Kindness, in this sense, must be conscious and discerning. If given blindly, it becomes fuel for corruption. If directed wisely, it safeguards not only our own integrity, but also the values that sustain healthy relationships and communities. Number 8. The betrayer. Carl Jung wrote that betrayal cuts deeper than aggression because it wounds the soul at its foundation, trust. Aggression you can prepare for. You can defend against open hostility. But betrayal is different because it comes from within the circle you thought was safe. The betrayer is not a stranger, they are someone you once held close, someone you lowered your guard for. That is why the wound left by betrayal is not just external, it scars the psyche. It does not merely damage relationships, it shatters the individual's basic faith in others. The betrayer wears the mask of loyalty, but is secretly driven by jealousy, resentment, or hidden rivalry. Outwardly, they present themselves as a confidant, a supporter, even a friend. Inwardly, they harbor envy at your progress, bitterness at your success, or rage at your independence. Jung taught that where there is envy, there is often projection. We project trustworthiness onto someone because we need to believe in them, not because they have earned it. This psychological mechanism blinds us to the subtle red flags. We convince ourselves that loyalty exists when, in fact, it is only our desire for loyalty being mirrored back to us. The tragedy of betrayal lies in this blindness. We ignore the uneasy feelings, the small inconsistencies, the faint shadows in their character. Jung reminded us that the unconscious is always speaking, often through intuition. But we dismiss intuition in favor of comfort. We would rather believe in a safe illusion than confront a painful reality. Thus, when betrayal comes, it always feels sudden when in truth, the signs were there all along. When you help a betrayer, you are not aiding a friend. you are equipping an enemy. Every gift becomes a weapon, every shared secret becomes leverage, and every kindness becomes ammunition. The betrayer studies your generosity the way a predator studies its prey. They learn your strengths, but more importantly, they memorize your weaknesses. They catalog your fears, your desires, and your blind spots. And then, they wait because betrayal requires timing. It is never random. It is always deliberate. Jung believed that the shadow of the repressed, hidden self always finds expression. In the betrayer, that shadow manifests as treachery disguised as friendship. On the surface, they are helpful, supportive, even affectionate. But beneath the surface lies an unconscious compulsion, the urge to destroy what they cannot become, to wound what they secretly envy. This is why betrayal often comes from those closest to us: family, lovers, friends, or longtime allies. Proximity gives them both motive and opportunity. Helping a betrayer only fuels their duplicity. You give them opportunities, and they twist them into chains. You provide them trust, and they turn it into manipulation. You hand them tools, and those tools return as weapons pointed at you. Jung warned that what you resist persists. By refusing to see the betrayer's shadow, you invite it to grow stronger. By denying their envy, you empower it. By excusing their small disloyalties, you prepare yourself for the larger one. The cost of betrayal is always higher than the gift. A financial loss can be recovered. A physical injury can heal. But betrayal pierces deeper. It corrupts faith in humanity itself. Many who experience betrayal build walls around their hearts. They become cautious, suspicious, sometimes even paranoid. Jung observed that when trust is shattered, the psyche often retreats, creating defenses that are meant to protect but also isolate. In this sense, betrayal does not just harm the betrayed, it transforms them. But perhaps the most devastating aspect of betrayal is its power to awaken your own shadow. When you are betrayed, rage emerges. Vengeance whispers. Resentment grows. You may feel yourself becoming like the betrayer, willing to deceive, to hurt, to cut others before they cut you. Jung would argue that this is the moment of danger and opportunity. Danger, because the betrayed risks becoming what they hate. Opportunity, because confronting betrayal forces one to confront their own shadow, the need for trust, the fear of abandonment, the longing for loyalty. To deal with the betrayer, Jung would say, requires ruthless clarity. You cannot help them, because betrayal is not a mistake, it is a choice. A betrayer betrays not once, but as a pattern. Their shadow demands expression, and betrayal is its chosen language. Forgiveness may be possible, but forgetting is fatal. To return to them, to trust them again, is to invite the wound to reopen. The antidote, Jung suggests, is individuation, the process of integrating the shadow and seeing clearly, without illusion. To individuate is to accept that not all who smile are friends, not all who promise are loyal, and not all who stand beside you wish you well. It is to honor intuition, to respect the quiet voice of suspicion, and to learn from past wounds without being ruled by them. In the end, the betrayal forces us to mature. It strips away naive projections and demands discernment. The betrayer teaches us, not by their loyalty, but by their treachery. They remind us that trust must be earned, not assumed, that loyalty must be tested, not merely proclaimed, and that not everyone who asks for help deserves it. Helping the betrayer is a mistake that always ends in suffering. Walking away from them, however, is not cruelty, it is self-preservation. Jung would insist that true compassion must begin with the self. And the self cannot thrive while chained to someone who sharpens knives behind your back. Number 9. The envious. Carl Jung taught that the human psyche is constantly influenced by hidden forces, our complexes, our shadow, and the unconscious drives that shape our behavior. Among the most destructive of these forces is envy. It is not just a fleeting emotion, it is a psychological poison. Envy corrodes inner balance, blinds people to their own worth, and makes them prisoners of endless comparison. the envious cannot truly celebrate another's success. Instead, they feel diminished by it. Someone else's progress becomes a reminder of their own perceived inadequacy. This is why Jung saw envy as a projection of the shadow. Rather than facing their own insecurities, the envious cast blame outward, accusing others of having unfair advantages or undeserved blessings. In doing so, they remain blind to the deeper issue, the inner conflict within themselves. Helping the envious is rarely fruitful. They do not interpret support as kindness, but as a threat. Your success, your advice, or even your generosity may only deepen their resentment. Jung would explain that when you offer help, the envious person unconsciously interprets it as proof of inferiority, a reminder that they are less than you. Instead of gratitude, they respond with suspicion or hostility. A vivid example can be seen in the rivalry between Steve Jobs and John Sculley. Jobs brought Sculley into Apple with the hope of building a stronger future for the company. But instead of aligning with Jobs, Sculley became consumed by envy. He perceived Jobs' brilliance not as inspiration, but as a threat. This envy eventually led to Jobs being ousted from the very company he founded. Yet, Sculley's decision, rooted in insecurity, backfired. Jobs returned years later and transformed Apple into one of the greatest companies in history. The lesson here is clear. Envy clouds judgment, destroys partnerships, and turns potential allies into adversaries. Extending help to an envious person can therefore be dangerous, not only futile, but harmful. Jung would argue that envy reflects an unintegrated shadow. The envious individual sees in others what they secretly long for, but refuse to acknowledge in themselves. Instead of striving to grow, they project hostility onto those who embody what they lack. This creates an endless cycle of bitterness, where the person undermines themselves while trying to undermine others. Trying to help someone in this state is like pouring water into a cup full of holes. No matter how much you give encouragement, advice, opportunity, it will drain away into their resentment. They cannot hold on to your support because their unconscious mind interprets it through envy's distortion. The best response, then, is not to waste energy on trying to fix them. Instead, protect your own psychological balance and direct your support toward people who are open, appreciative, and capable of growth. Jung emphasized that authentic relationships require reciprocity. The envious cannot provide this reciprocity. They are too focused on comparison. In friendships, they may subtly undermine your confidence. In workplaces, they may sabotage or discredit your achievements. In families, they may withdraw affection or show passive hostility when others succeed. Their shadow drives them to drag others down rather than lift themselves up. So how should we respond? Jung would remind us that compassion must be balanced with discernment. True kindness is not about feeding someone's destructive tendencies, it is about encouraging growth. And growth cannot occur without self-awareness. Since envy thrives in denial, your efforts to help will only reinforce their projections. Sometimes, the most compassionate act is to step back, to let the envious confront their own inner conflict. Protecting your energy does not make you unkind, it makes you wise. Your time and efforts are limited, and Jung teaches us that they must be directed consciously. By investing in people who are receptive and grateful, you reinforce healthy psychological patterns. By wasting energy on the envious, you not only exhaust yourself but also validate their distorted worldview. Kindness, when misdirected, becomes complicity. But kindness, when wisely given, nurtures growth and creates genuine connection. That is why Jung's psychology encourages us to examine carefully who we give our energy to. Do they meet you with openness? Do they use your help to grow? Or do they twist your support into resentment? These questions reveal where true healing can happen. In the end, the lesson is simple. Don't let envy's shadow consume your own peace. You cannot cure it for another person, they must face their shadow themselves. Invest your time in those who are ready to grow, ready to change, and ready to see others' success as a mirror for their own potential.